Hello and welcome. We are honored to have you with us today for our latest in the webinar series, GIS for Crisis Response and Community Resilience. My name is James Kelt. I am the Public Safety Specialist with Geographic Technologies Group. I have been in the GIS industry for over 25 years, and I'm very excited about today's topic, Modernizing Policing with Geospatial Technology. I'd like to start off by learning a little bit about you, our attendees. We have a short poll we would ask that you fill out so we can get an idea of where you're located, what discipline you're in, what type of organization do you work for. So if you don't mind filling out that poll, we would greatly appreciate that. And then we'll take a look at the results here in just a minute. Today, we have a stellar group of panelists covering a wealth of topics relating to geospatial technology for public safety. We really hope that and feel that you will get a lot out of today's webinar from our panelists. We are honored to have with us today Mr. Brian Balfanz, who is the intelligence analyst with the City of St. Paul, Minnesota Police Department. He will be discussing how the city modernized the police forces and the police department's geospatial experience. So looking forward to that presentation. Our second presentation will be from Mr. Jonathan Welker. He is the Senior GIS Analyst with Geographic Technologies Group, and will be showcasing the latest GIS technology for modern police force. Also today, Mr. John Gallagher, who is the Director of Public Safety Business Development with CompassCom, and he will discuss single platform tracking for comprehensive situational awareness. Last but not least, Mr. Seth Finkel is the Digital Transformation 3D Digital Twin Technology Lead with Arcadis, and he will present 3D reality capture and digital scene replicas. So hopefully you had enough time to fill out the poll. Maybe we can take a quick peek at some of those results. Always interesting to see where you are and what organization you work for. Not surprising, majority of today's attendees, almost 80%, are in the local government space. So welcome to you all. We have some state folks as well, some academia folks, various other industries and disciplines. So that's great to see you all here. A majority of us are here in the United States. We have a few from Canada, so welcome to each of you. And looks like we've got a small portion overseas, so welcome to each of you dialing in. Probably a late hour for you tonight, so welcome. In the sectors that we work for, it looks like a majority of us are in the IT GIS space, as well as law enforcement, and that's not uncommon. We're going to see a lot of folks in both of those disciplines, because it is GIS for public safety. We have some crime analysts, some policy making and advising folks. So again, welcome to each of you. And then various municipalities of different sizes. So good. Yeah, glad to have you all here. Just a little housekeeping for the presentation. The entire session will be recorded and will be available to you for your review very soon. Also, we encourage you to use the question and answer section in the Zoom call. That way you can post questions as each panelist is making their presentations. And then at the end, when we all come together for the panelist review section, we will try to answer as many of those questions as possible. So yeah, feel free to use that Q&A portion. That gives us some good feedback on how we can answer those questions and move forward. So on behalf of our speakers today, I want to thank you all for taking the time to meet with us. I really feel like today's presentations are going to help, as well as give you some insight on how GIS can be used in your operations. I would also like to thank our friends at Asset Mapping and ConnectMe for their assistance in making today's session possible. So with that, let's get started with our first panelist, Mr. Brian Balfanz with the City of St. Paul, Minnesota Police Department. Brian, are you there?
Thank you, James. Yes, hopefully I can get a thumbs up. You can hear me and things are fine.
Yep, everything's good. I'll go ahead and turn my camera off and give you the floor.
Thank you, sir. And before I jump into the main reason we're here, what I consider the show and tell piece of things, I just want to give a little brief background on myself. I've been with the City of St. Paul, which is capital city of the state of Minnesota on the shores of the Mississippi for over 25 years, the last 13 or 14 in the police department. But I've also spent time in the technology department, our public works department, and our parks department. So over the years, I've seen some similarities in the needs of these different departments, trying to do more with less, different iterations of technology evolution. And as I got near the end of my career, I wanted to really try and pull something together that answered a lot of the questions that were repetitively asked and be of service, both horizontally up and down the organization, as well as vertically across some of the other specialties. So with that, I'd like to share screen. Let me know if you're seeing it okay. Hopefully you're seeing something that says common operating picture.
You are good to go, Brian.
Excellent, thank you. So part of the funding for this and the cooperation of this is working with our co-departments in the Office of Technology, as well as emergency management, in addition to some support from the Department of Homeland Security. This is St. Paul, that you're seeing here, our capital, the Mississippi River. We have 7 bridges on the Mississippi River, which I believe is the most of any city in the country. And as we saw in Baltimore, damage to the infrastructure or responding to threats at soft targets, crowded spaces can have an impact to our national concerns. Likewise, with the barge traffic coming up in the spring, bringing commodities up to the Midwest, this is the terminus point for the Mississippi River for distribution of major commodities. And we are a large distribution center for grain that works its way down the Mississippi and out to the world through the port of New Orleans. So the nexus of what we're doing is to create this common operating picture so that we can have a good understanding of what's happening in our city, but it also impacts our nation's food supply as well as the world, which is why as we look at some of these elements up at the top of our launch page, this is what the end users get to see when they click on the link, is we've made some fairly quick connections. So this might take you to the public website or to our state Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. In this case, I have it connected to our river gauge, which is here. So we can see that we're well below flood stage at this point, even though it's springtime. And this is critical to understanding how we're going to deploy assets if there is a flood scenario. In addition, we've got some things related to our snow emergency, our available parking, and a log on to our records management system. The data in our records management system is feeding into our common operating picture, but we distinctly keep a separate login in respect for the criminal justice information system, firewall, and cybersecurity purposes. Moving on, looking at some of the key elements of our common operating picture, I have a responsibility of doing some of the final crime analysis and statistical reporting. It rolls up from the city to the state and then from the state to the FBI. I'm old enough to have used the old Part A SRS system, and over the last 4 to 5 years, the country has converted now over to the National Incident-Based Reporting System, and that is, instead of Part A and Part B crimes, now it's Group A, Group B, Group C, crime against person, crime against property, crime against society. And we've also created our own violent crime, again, pulling out of that RMS data, because it's essentially the property crime, or excuse me, it's essentially the crimes against person with robbery pulled in. Then moving down, the city of St. Paul has been dedicated for over 20 years to community-oriented policing. So you can see that we've built in, at the very first glance, anyone in the organization who has access to this can see where are we at this year versus last year in our calls for service, which can include officer-generated, non-emergency, online submissions, a variety of sources. Then our 911 calls, which are pretty consistent year to year. And then something I'm proud of is that our PPVs, our proactive police visits, are actually up nearly 33% over last year. Truth be told, we had one of the worst winters of all time last year, and this year we were blessed with slightly less snow. So it afforded us a little bit more opportunity to get out and engage the public without responding to a 911. It's an important gauge of how we're doing as a department in our commitment to community-oriented policing. As we move down, we have some very specific dashboards, and these were reflective of the different requests that I had received over the last 10 to 13 years, be it a budget request, maybe a FOIA request, things related to staffing, political requests, budget requests, or preparing for community outreach. And so I took that knowledge, and then we also worked with the stakeholders within the department to say, well, what are your unmet needs? What are the things that you want to have a few clicks away rather than sending an email that goes through channels that winds up in somebody's desk sitting for a week until they get back from vacation or they're on a military assignment, and then they come back in. And now 2 to 3 weeks have passed before you've had a chance to get the information. On a side note, the chief once asked me recently, Brian, what do you like the most about this? And I said, well, I love all my children equally, but what I most like is that I'm not part of the bottleneck. If we can get more use out of this dashboard, out of this common operating picture, then everybody wins, and we're all looking at the same information so that there's not questions about, well, who pulled what data for what criteria. It's all here. So if you don't mind, I think what I'd like to do next with the time I have available is step through some of these. So I'm going to jump up to these tabs here, but essentially if I were to click on one of these NIBRS related tabs, I would then go, in this case, to the Crimes Against Person overview. And what's nice is that we've built this in such a way that you've got all of your NIBRS type categories, but we've also set it up reflecting the needs of the department and the feedback we got. We get to see how is it this week compared to last week? How is it this month compared to the previous month? And how is it year to date compared to last year? And so it gives the command staff a fairly quick glance. But if they want to, they can also dial in to a specific district. For instance, our downtown area is in the central district. And now we can see how the numbers reflect what's going on in downtown and the greater central district. But we can get even more drilled down if we want to look at the specific downtown grids or police beats, depending on your jurisdiction. For instance, I might want 131, 32, 33, and 51, 52, and 53. Now I'm really into the core of the downtown area. I didn't have to wait on an email. I have my numbers, and I can even subdivide it into the types of crimes that are occurring in that area. So now I have feedback. I could be answering questions over the phone to a city council member with nearly real-time data to let them know if what they're hearing through their constituents is matching up with the data that we're showing. Again, very similar. In this case, it's the property crimes. Those of you who've worked with crime statistics know that theft is generally the lead category that drives the numbers. And so we could always take a look at just a certain type of category. Excuse me, there we go. And in this case, let's take a look at robbery. And there you have it. So now we know citywide how we're doing that, robbery as a property crime type is down year to date. And that's something that we can feel proud about. Also, we can take a look at where are we having those successes by looking at specific grids or districts versus where are we not having success, and can we adapt our techniques, tactics, and operations to improve overall. So then going back, I think the next one that I'd like to, show off is our queue and response. Because particularly in the last 3 to 4 years, recruitment and retention in police agencies across much of the country has been difficult. So having these types of dashboards and technology available is a great way to recruit and retain some of our younger officers, in addition to answering questions that we have internally and how we can maximize our limited resources. So if I were to touch on the queue and response, here it is. This was one that I would get frequently on an annual basis because we combine some of this queue and response time with our bid results as to how many street officers we're going to put into each of our districts. Currently, it's a multi-year, but I can change that thanks to the app and just look at, for instance, the past month, if you will. So I'll take the 1st to the 14th, and as I make that change, you can see that our queue and response and total times have changed. Now I want to dial into our high priority calls, the P2s, and you can see we now have a better queue and response time. Also, I can say I only want 911 calls, and I only want that for the East District. So now as I move across districts using the exact same time frame with a 911 P2 source, I can take a very quick look without waiting on the analyst to run SQL code to put it into a spreadsheet and send it off to me. And I can compare how's West doing compared to East. So they have a slower queue time and more average time on scene. We could then take a deeper dive and look at what's the complexity of the call, how many officers are responding per call, or maybe I take a look at Central. They seem to have a pretty good queue time, so the calls are not waiting as long, but they are seeing a pretty high response time, or excuse me, time on scene. So with that, we can then take a deeper dive, but in the short term, at least we have a consistent point of reference for all of the districts when they start talking about how are we using our resources, how many officers are going to be applied into these districts, and are there ways that we can maximize what we're doing per shift, or how we're looking at how we're responding to different types of priority calls. The next one that I'd like to share with you, please excuse me, I'm not the best in presenting, would be the firearms incidents. Obviously, firearms and weapons related crimes are a key concern. We'll give this just a minute to fire up. And the value of this dashboard, obviously, is that we want to get a handle on what's happening with weapons crimes throughout the city. And now that I've got it, we're looking at 2 years worth of data essentially. So I'd like to basically dive in a little bit closer. And I only want to look at the past 3 weeks. And so now I can see what we've got going on here. So sometimes there's an advantage to having all the year-to-date stats, depending on if you're trying to make a presentation for an annual budget or a quarterly meeting. Other times you want to get a handle on what are we doing. And here now I can see that we've got a high concentration in this grid. And thanks to the system, I can very easily throw in the OpenStreetMaps layer. And I can get in a little bit tighter and say, okay, now that we've got these shots fired calls, what can we do to work with the community at perhaps West Minnehaha Park, Frogtown Park, and some of the local institutions and shopping malls to say, we want to do more to engage the community. We've identified, here's Ryan Park, we can have more work there with some of the local churches and synagogues, mosques. It's all available to us to be more efficient and effective with our limited resources to engage our community. Additionally, I'm going to go back. I'd like to also show the value of having our CCTV layer. And there's a method to the madness here. These are what you would consider our public City of St. Paul publicly owned CCTV camera systems. This is not nearly all the cameras available in the city of St. Paul, but they're the ones that we own and manage. There may also be state-based cameras, Department of Transportation cameras, Ramsey County cameras, school districts, Parks and Rec. There are other cameras that are not reflected on here. And one of the things that was made available to us was a small data set of where some of the constituents were willing to provide information to us to say, yes, I've got a camera. And if you'd like to add me to the list, we could then take that list and map it in conjunction with our CCTV cameras. The reason I'm presenting this now is the chief gave me an aha moment and said, well, Brian, is there a way we can add these other entities' cameras in here? Are there ways that we can work with our Department of Licensing and Inspections to get cameras, or with our libraries department? The answer is yes. If we can get a list of a location, we can get the cameras on the map. We do not activate this camera and open up a real-time video. That's why we separate it out on our homepage to have your own CCTV log on. If you want to look at the cameras, look at it separately. We don't want to break systems by overloading them with too much video bandwidth. But going back to that view, I just want to open up, if you will, give me a minute, the crime analysis widget. So what I've done in advance of this is to pull up the last 30 days of auto thefts. Working with Geographic Technologies Group, we've been able to identify some of the user-defined search parameters as well as some of the predefined. And so in this case, if I zoom out, I can see my auto thefts for the past 30 days. But what I really want to do is respond to the constituents in this particular area. And with that, I don't really have department-owned CCTV cameras in this area. But I do have some private cams that are allowable in the system. So now I've got an opportunity to say, are there things, are there suspect activities, are there cars fleeing, where we can then reach out to the property owners here. In addition, I can look at this and say, maybe I want to put up a temporary camera here, here, and here, a trailer cam, if you will, to create more coverage. Maybe I want to set up my community meetings at these 3 local parks. Or maybe I want to send out a letter, if you will, or do some knock and talks and go to these individual locations and create some buzz about how you can prevent auto theft in the first place and set people up with some of the resources they need to be successful. And then here, the system also gives us the tabular data, if that's what we would like, that goes along with that 30-day motor vehicle theft, so that we can then track the activity after the fact. Similarly, I can look at my arrest data. I can explode out some of the information just to make it easier to use. And now I'm going to focus on just the 14 to 16-year-old arrestees. And I'm going to do it in the last 3 weeks. And there you can see it's a very small data output, but it gives the investigator or it gives the community engagement specialists a way to more effectively and efficiently use resources that if you don't have the spatial data to know where things are happening, you're a bit limited. So with that, I think I'd like to stop talking. I'm sure the rest of you would like me to stop talking. And I'm also going to stop sharing my screen and I believe hand it off to Jonathan.
All right. Thank you, Brian. So yeah, I'm Jonathan Welker, Senior Enterprise Solutions Analyst with Geographic Technologies Group, or GTG. I've been with GTG for 10 years in a variety of roles and still serve in a variety of roles. But one of the most common ones that I serve in, and the one that I enjoy the most, is working with various local government departments, from Parks and Rec to Office of Emergency Services to Planning and Zoning, and of course to police, in helping to identify what data is available, what data needs to be made available for those staff, and what data points could potentially be integrated with, and then also figuring out how to leverage that data in various Esri solutions to be able to get not only to get the data as well as the tools necessary into the hands of the staff to be able to make better decisions, inform decision making, identify patterns, trends, gaps, and do some analysis in those fashions. So I'm going to kind of branch off of what Brian was showing us there and show a couple additional options that Esri has available for us, kind of along those same efforts of being able to get the right data and the right tools into the right hands. So the first one that we're going to take a look at here is going to be ArcGIS Community Analyst. And this tool is all focused on bringing that demographic information, that social tapestry information directly at the fingertips to be able to do some analysis and create some infographics and reports around that. So what we'll notice here is I have a city boundary brought up on the screen. I'm going to define a couple of other areas. So within this solution, I'm able to select specific standard geographies or political boundaries. So I'm going to go ahead and select from a map here. And to go along with my city boundary, I'll go ahead and choose a couple census tracts as well. So we'll see these load on the map, and I can start to select a couple of these within the city of Roswell to define those to use. So I'll select a couple, maybe two on the west, and we'll do one on the east here as well. And I'll select finish. And so this is going to add those to the map and go ahead and prompt us with a couple pop-ups, which we're going to close those and then come over to our sites. So now in my geographies, I have the city of Roswell, a couple of census tracts within there. So what can I actually do with these standard geographies in this particular tool? Well, I can start to get into my reporting. I can start to run infographics. So this is getting into that demographic information, that census data and American Community Survey data, which previously, if you've done work with GIS, has been a chore to get to be approachable and to be able to get access to, particularly in an updated fashion. And I'm able to start to run some of those preset infographics that are available to us through this solution. So you can see we've got a census summary in here. Maybe we want to look at our at-risk population or our tapestry profile, or any of these trends that are available from a variety, really a wealth of variables that are available. So I'll go ahead and choose the first one here, the 2020 census summary. And from this location, we could choose to run side by side for all of these geographic boundaries that I've pulled into the map. And let me go ahead and add my city as well so that we can get the full view. Or we could run them individually. So if I choose to run this side by side for all, within just a couple of clicks, adding in kind of those standard geography boundaries, this is going to give us a side by side pulling from the latest census data, that latest American Community Survey data, to give us what the side-by-side comparison looks like for each of these geographies with their name, the census kind of block group up here at the top, and then the city over here on the far right. Now this is pretty cluttered. I'll take it off the side-by-side comparison. Maybe we'll just show the city of Roswell here so we can get a closer view of what this looks like. And give that just a second. And so here we'll see, and it looks like this went back to my census tract. Let me switch that over to our city. Our full city demographic profile in just a couple of clicks. So we're able to see the annual growth rate, the household population, the total population by race. And in working with local governments, this is naturally something that we want to keep an eye on from a city perspective. And particularly as we get into various departments and policing and community outreach, and looking at trends in our policing numbers and information we're getting out of our CAD and RMS systems and how that's aligning with our demographic profiles, we want to take a look at those. So we could export this infographic. I'm going to leave this just as it is. Go ahead and close this out. So how can we build on top of this? At this point in time, we're basically just looking at census information for some standard geographies. The beautiful part of this particular application comes in being able to bring in your own data to supplement that. So you'll notice I've added in a couple of accidents, citations, warrants, our beats. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my beats on. And I'm going to set up this layer to be able to use. And that's just going to be my polygons. I'm going to make sure that I give these an accurate title here so that we're getting our beat name. And I'm going to choose setup layer. This is not a standard. This is just going to be a polygon layer. I'm going to say I'm done. Then I'm going to go and be able to run those same reports, those same preset reports, if I would like to, specifically for those beats. And the way that we're able to do this is that Esri uses settlement points to be able to get more accurate locations. So some post-processing of that census data to get more accurate locations within those individual census tracts and census blocks that were normally defined to. So I'm going to clear my sites here. Let me add my sites that are currently on map, and we'll add a couple beats here. Hit apply. The other thing that we can do in here, now that we're looking at our own data, is start to build our own infographics. So I won't run through the building portion of this, but it is very drag and drop, setting up your own custom data to look at information that you'd like to. So I'm going to go ahead and choose one of the ones that I've built, kind of extended on a preset infographic that Esri has provided. And now I'm going to run side by side for the beats that I'm interested in. And so you'll see alongside of that demographic information that we want to look at, so our population, our growth trends, our race and demographic analyses and breakdowns, we're able to get our beat information for our part 1 incidents, our aggravated assaults as well. So let me turn off the side-by-side comparison as well here. And so now again, instead of looking at those census tracts up here at the top, we're looking at our part 1 crimes breakdown, and then also being able to reflect that against the demographic information, that social tapestry information. Again, very important for being able to look at potentially part 1 crimes, our arrest demographics against the demographics of the beat that we're also looking at. And to further expand on this, of course, this can be used for internal analysis and individual crime analysts looking at this or sharing this information among colleagues. But then we can further export this to a dashboard. So it's easy to navigate. It's very intuitive. We can look at this same infographic, selecting between pages, selecting between different beats. For instance, I'll zoom in here to A1. We're able to see the part 1 crime breakdown, able to see our household population and move between the multiple sheets that are part of this infographic. Going to A2, we can see that same information as is broken down for our A2 beat. And this is what I'm looking at is very scrubbed, basic information coming out of RMS and CAD, but really this infographic up here at the top, the specific part where we're building in data that is tailored to your needs and to what your department has available is completely dependent on what attribution and data is available for you. And that's kind of where that marriage of how good, how accurate, how complete and healthy is our data, and what can we do with that as an output. So we're going to shift gears over from the community analysts, kind of looking at demographics, into extending what Brian was looking at with the dashboard setup. So traditionally, kind of that dashboard setup is that high level, that finger on the pulse, getting our supervisors, our managers, the information that they need within just a couple of clicks of preset filters, queries, and gauges and metrics to be able to get a quick view, a quick glance. We're going to look at ArcGIS Insights here, which I like to refer to as an active analytical environment. So I'm going to start here with just one data layer. We're still looking at the same city, looking at that same scrubbed information for our incidents here. And I'm going to start to build out within the next maybe a minute or two some of the analytics that we might want to do about this incidence data. So the first thing that we might want to do is generate a heat map for this. So I can drag my incidents over, and this is all drag and drop, very easy to use kind of in the modern GIS environment. And I'll say I want to create a map. We have our incident points over here on the left. We go ahead and throw my incident points over here to the right. Perhaps we want this to be reflected instead of just points. We want this to be a heat map to reflect kind of where the hotspots are of all of our incidents. I'm going to go ahead and change the color palette to something I'm more prone to. And so now we have a heat map, and we can link those together with the views so that as I zoom in with one, that's going to also zoom in with my other map as well. But there's other data within these incidents. If I start to expand this kind of data view down on the left, we can see we got a lot of fields to work with. And I'm sure you guys do in your CAD and RMS systems as well, including some of our date occurred information. So I could choose my month and my year. We could choose those two criteria. Go ahead and drag those over. We'll say we're going to do a chart, a line graph based off that month and those year criteria. So we have full 2022, full 2023 data, but our 2024 stops to drop off. But just based on this, we can kind of see the spikes and trends within month and year for what we have available in the data set. So since 2024 is dropping off, I can go ahead and click up here, change my filter. We'll say, that 2024, we don't have full data. Let's go ahead and kind of chop that section out of there. So now that we're working with just specifically 2022, 2023 data that we have full years for. So I can also take my same data over here. Let's look at the month again, but maybe this time we want the month and the description or the NIBRS code or whatever the case may be. So in this instance, we'll say description, come down to chart. Let's do a stacked column chart. So now we're looking at our individual crime descriptions or our NIBRS codes breakdown by month. So how, what are the trends? When are we seeing certain crime types in certain months? Again, we're looking for those spikes, the patterns, and the gaps. Maybe we want to look at our beats, bring our beat over. What beats have the most incidents? Create a bubble chart. Again, pretty instantly being able to reflect by the size of the circle, what beats are going to have the most incidents, at least within the criteria that we're looking at in our analytical tools. Then we could get into other charts and graphs. We can look at our data clock. So looking at potentially the day of the month, as well as the month. Let's bring this over. Look at a data clock. This is going to show us kind of month by month and day by day within that month, kind of what are our trends. Again, the darker purple here is going to be able to show us where the most incidents are occurring, or on what date and within what month most incidents are occurring. And we're able to change any of these on the fly just by clicking within the incidents here. Maybe we didn't want to do day of month, we want a day of week, perhaps. And that's going to instantly change that to Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and so on. We can also potentially change some of these other options. So looking at our beat, for instance, as well as our descriptions. So we have our beat bubble chart up at the beginning, kind of giving us that broad view of our beats and our incidents. But maybe we want to break this down even further by a tree map. So up here at the top, kind of in this purple, that's going to be all of our A2s. The most that we have in our A2s is going to be categorized as our all other theft. We also have theft, shoplifting, stolen property, etc. And all of these are interactive. So as you start to interact with any of these, it's going to change my heat map. It's going to change my incident points. It's going to change my chart that I built for our month and our year, which again, really helps to drill down into some of these analytical tools. And as you begin to filter these out, selecting, you'll notice this action button, which prompts the analyst with questions. So how is it distributed? How is it related? How has it changed over time based on the data that we have available, giving you and almost kind of teasing you with options for how to move forward with your analysis. Then I think the final thing that I want to show here, if I bring in some additional data. So I'm going to search for some subdivision data, but again, one of the great things about this is you're able to load in a CSV to do some instant geocoding. You're able to connect to a database, or you're able, in this case, to find data layers that are available within your organization. So I will unselect all. We just want to bring in our subdivisions. And perhaps we also want to add in our incidents. And so with these two layers added in here, I can start to aggregate this data out. So we want to know, what does our crime look like? What do our incidents look like within our subdivision? So again, I'm going to use the action button. I'm going to go over to spatial analysis. I'm going to do spatial aggregation based on the incidents occurring in those subdivisions. Hit run. And within just a couple of seconds, we're going to get that aggregation, that count of how many incidents are happening within that subdivision, within each individual subdivision. And once that's finished, we can remove our incidents. And maybe we want to adjust the symbology. Don't want graduated symbols or counts in dot circle form. Maybe we want the colors here to better represent those polygons. And then finally here, once we do have that spatial aggregation for the subdivision, for the beats, for the grids, whatever the geography is, we also have options here to enrich that data and to start to draw those comparisons with our demographics if we'd like to. So we could open up the data browser. We can view some of those same demographic variables that are available in the community analyst solution that we looked at before. So maybe we want to look at it against the population for those subdivisions, or the age, or for our beats, or the race breakdown for our beats or our grids. So again, being able to provide as much data, whether that be internal data from your CAD and your RMS systems or other departments within your local government agency, or data that's available through Esri, or data that may need to be available from other resources as well, to bring all of that into one solution where decisions can be made more effectively and more efficiently, as Brian was mentioning earlier with the dashboards. So finally, what we can do here is start to share this out, right? So we could do a PDF style report of this if we'd like to share amongst our colleagues, or as we deem fit, or we could share this out as an interactive insights, almost poster board, as I like to call it. So this is one that I filled out earlier based off that same data. It doesn't look exactly as it did, but end users of this, while not having the ability to add data or add any new metrics or charts or analysis, they do have the ability to interact with all of the graphics, the metrics, the analytical tools that have been built in here. That could be a date filter, a description filter, all of these pie charts or bubble charts. The part one crimes column charts over here are able to be filtered and used kind of as an end user style of analysis. One more that I have here, looking at Vision Zero. Again, kind of the same tool as an end user output, looking at where our collision, our different types of collisions are. So maybe it's a pedestrian accident that we want to investigate. Analyzing all of that down to where those are occurring. Potentially there's an intersection hotspot where those pedestrian accidents are happening, and we might need to do some, might need to remedy that potential situation. And to close it all out, where does this all come together? I would be remiss if I did not mention ArcGIS Hub, which is going to be that central repository for a natural GIS repository for any ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise applications, providing a one-stop shop to be able to get to all of these tools. So this is our demo site for Safe City GIS, Geographic Technologies Group. This is going to be also where you want to encourage public engagement with public-facing tools, accessible through cards, perhaps, or links if you'd like to. So this could be any story maps that you want, introducing the community to your efforts or initiatives. It could be going out to internal applications, which are available if you sign in. So hubs do have the ability to be completely public, completely private, or some kind of hybrid approach to where certain sections of ArcGIS Hub are only available once you sign in. And of course, through ArcGIS Hub, you're able to leverage open data components as well, looking at any type of documents, PDFs, open data that you would like to make available. And so one thing that I do want to call out, just because I mentioned kind of the public and the private part, I do have a private part just behind here. So if we look up at the header, we see 2 links currently available. But if I do sign in with my organizational account or a group that has access, or as a member of a group that has access, we will see an internal solutions come available here, which is where we can get to some of those more analytical tools or those analytical outputs that we may only want to share between members of our department or our organization. And finally, I just wanted to point out what Berkeley is doing as part of their transparency effort through their policing. This is their Berkeley Police Transparency Hub. So a real kind of active use case for using ArcGIS Hub, getting the message from the chief on the landing page, what their mission, vision, and values are, and then also providing direct public information to various criteria. So that could be their stop data, where they're giving out aggregated stop data snapshots for the past 30 days, the past year, how that compares to last year. So some of that same information, although a lot more limited than we were seeing in Brian's dashboards, providing that directly out to the public to be able to engage with them and provide that transparency that we're looking for. And then getting into some community engagement, again, including what they're up to, some upcoming events, initiatives that the community has ongoing on. So really a great resource to provide that direct connection between the City of Berkeley Police and their community. And with that, I will stop sharing and turn it over to John Gallagher. So John, take it away.
Terrific. Excellent. Okay, so my name is John Gallagher, and I'm from CompassCom Software Corporation. We are we basically serve a number of industries. We just had a great presentation there about the capabilities of ArcGIS and Esri. We have been Esri partner for approximately 20 years, and we've done an extensive amount of interface to Esri and our customers' product development and workflow systems they developed that fundamentally rely on data that we provide. And so to get there kind of quickly, what you see there on this slide is basically, it's a viewing screen, and our primary area of focus is security, law enforcement. We are somewhat device agnostic. We didn't select a specific type of GIS device that we were going to gather location data for. So we basically approach the public safety space as from the radio perspective. So we're also Motorola Solutions partner. So we track Motorola's law enforcement radios. We also track their commercial radios as well, and we also, if the customer has these devices or wishes to add them on the same common platform, we can also track broadband modem devices. So in this interest of having a common operational picture and being able to see your assets, your personnel, and where they're distributed across your area of operations, you're not limited to looking at one type of device, and most importantly, you are not also required to invest in multiple tracking systems that are device oriented. So we're more data oriented. What we're trying to do is ingest from all these different types of devices to our GIS based server the location data, and then we will present that data, as you see here, on a customer provided data map, or we have the capability to build maps for customers. And as I said, we are fundamentally, our product is designed around the Esri technology. In this case, I think we can move on. Thank you. Okay, so what's important in law enforcement if you're implementing location? What do you want to try to accomplish, right? So I think most dispatchers would say, well, the thing that I'm really interested in is I really need to know where people are. As calls are coming in and requests for service, the faster we can locate the appropriate resource to respond to an incident, the better off we are, right? And we can improve our response times, which deals certainly with delivering officer safety and enhancing the public safety as well, as we increase the efficiency of our response. So, for example, as you see on the screen that I'm addressing here, we can poll any device in the system that is pollable. All these devices have different capabilities. For this discussion, I'm focusing more on the capability of radio devices here. So I can request the dispatch person can request the location of any device that's in their inventory, and within seconds, that map will center on that device. If the poll is not responded to, there's a find function. All of our data is captured and stored in a standard a standard Microsoft SQL database. And so if I pull a device from a list and click on the find function, I will get the last reported no location of that device. And of course, the devices are also capable technically of being programmed to report their location in on a deterministic cadence. So every 2 minutes, 3 minutes, in a emergency situation, as quickly as every 30 seconds. And then if that type of an approach is not desirable, we can have the devices simply report their location on push to talk, or anytime anyone uses their radio to communicate, that radio will send us its location. Key to officer safety is if there's an emergency and the officer were to activate by pressing on the emergency button on his device, we will immediately stop everything and we will center on that, exactly on that location. In fact, I think we could move this slide. I believe I have this is an actual emergency, and you can see the icon of a radio overlaid on that imagery based map. And that information, that's what I would describe there in red as the information box about that device and about that end user. And in this manner, no matter where people in the dispatch center would be looking at the map in their whole broad area of operations, it could be a county, it could be a state, it could be a country. And that emergency button is pressed, the map automatically centers on that device. And then, of course, as you zoom in, zoom out, you can see your other assets in proximity to that individual requesting assistance. And that it definitely speeds up the response incredibly. And I would say that that is one thing our customers, obviously use, and it allows them to respond very, very quickly. And so in any case, let's move on one more. I want to just show something here to you all. The flexibility when we're talking about bringing GIS capability into a law enforcement environment or a military environment. Some of our largest customers are defense customers. When you have a flexible solution, you can literally, this is the live viewer from our system that is deployed in a supervisory officer's vehicle. So he can see in his vehicle, he can see exactly what the dispatchers can see back at the communication center. So there's a raft of flexibility here, and flexibility is really pretty much everything. And we're looking for efficiency everywhere we can find it, everywhere we can shave off seconds. I know from all that interesting data we were looking at, that's the agenda. How can you save time? How can you better serve the community by being able to be as responsive as you possibly can? Another key feature that is used by all of our implementations use this probably almost every day, and it's a historical replay capability. If you want to replay an incident, if you want to see how perhaps your team was conducting a search and rescue, and you want to be able to observe right from a vehicle in the field, frankly, how that team is conducting that search. You see those assets, you see those people, and then you can see the tracks, the actual progression of that search. The devices are now sending their location. We are using a feature called breadcrumbs. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. And what this allows a supervisory officer who is managing that response, who's addressing that requirement for a search and rescue effort, to quickly determine when a area or grid has been properly searched. This allows them to move much, much more quickly. And in search and rescue, time is generally always of the essence. And one of our most active users has basically told me that by having this GIS capability now layered into their search and rescue activities, real-time data, that he has been able to reduce the time in the field on a search and rescue as he's conducting it by approximately half. And that saves lives. That absolutely saves lives. That's geolocation data providing obviously a tremendous benefit to the agency as well as the public that they're serving. So in any event, once again, I would like to thank you all very much. Our data is always available from our database. It is always available to Esri users who have developed their own Esri solutions-based workflows and management type tools. And so we don't hold anyone's data hostage. We're happy to share it. We'll share it with CAD systems. We'll share it with any Esri-based systems. And in that case, I would just thank you all again for your time today. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Seth Finkel from Arcata Systems.
Thanks, John. Everyone see my screen? PowerPoint?
Yes.
Looks like yes. Good. Okay. So let's start with a level set definition of what we're talking about.
3D reality capture is the scanning and rendering of digital, photorealistic, and dimensionally accurate models of facilities and spaces. This technology has been used by law enforcement for decades. So names like Faro, Leica, Trimble, and others are likely familiar to everyone on this call. But as tends to happen with technology, we are on the verge of a major disruption. So as we consider the various layers of the GIS stack, the capture of indoor facility spaces with high resolution imagery and point cloud data at scale has long been desired, but to date has not been economically or operationally feasible. This is changing and is fast becoming a real and valuable data set. The unlock for this is a new generation of solutions that were designed differently, where anyone, anywhere, anytime, with minimal skills or training can quickly and easily scan any indoor or outdoor space, and with a push of a button, automatically a 3D high utility model can be automatically generated in minutes. So the model can then be securely viewed, accessed, shared via any mobile device, and put to use, supporting operations, analytics, and planning for policing and other local government activities. With over a dozen companies over the past decade evolving solutions in this space, by our conservative count, there's an online inventory of at least 100 billion square feet and 25 million scanned facilities and spaces. In short, this is happening. And the ability to turn scenes into data is fast becoming a compelling reality. So what does this mean? This presents two distinct opportunities, I think, for GIS teams and department heads. One is, how can your organizations embrace these technologies to improve operations, inform the planning process, and drive decisions and action? But two, how do you familiarize and intersect with the content that is already out there to help create safer, less vulnerable communities? So for example, a model of a school can be scanned and shared online by anyone today, right? This can be used for good, as a map for back to school night, for example, but also can be used to inform people with ill intent. So two sides to the coin, and I think there's a role for policing in both of those. So let's jump into the models themselves, better shown than told. So here's some examples of use cases within public safety, of course, our focus for this presentation, but also more broadly throughout local government. You've got schools and universities and the whole building and permitting area, very important as far as maintaining competitive communities and doing build the right way with code reinforcement and so on. So I'm going to start by sharing a model here and just confirming, can everyone see Michigan Collegiate High and Middle School?
Yep.
Yeah, good. Excellent. So here's an example of the model. And as you can see, it is photorealistic. It's got icons. This was actually scanned by a partner in Michigan called Operational Safer World. But what it allows anyone to do very intuitively is navigate this space that was scanned and auto-rendered along the description I told you about. So we can double-click in the space. And what Operation Safer Schools has done is identified public safety areas of interest. So where the fire extinguishers are, where the cameras are. Now, I do not have access to the real-time feeds, but another version of this model does. And if you look, there's different ways to annotate it. So for example, here they've labeled all the different areas and rooms. And for those that are more familiar or prefer a critical incident map, this is not an or, it's an and, where you can quickly click to the incident map that's more two-dimensional. Folks have used for Alice and Asher planning and reunification and so on. So it is another view, it is another dimension of data, arguably a more rich information data set, because you have the photorealism and the point cloud data where you can see things as they actually are. So it's a very compelling view. And as far as its integratability, it's all XYZ. So it's very easy to take these scenes and combine them with other content that might be available. So this is just one example of, I said, lots of models that are out there. Here's a fire scene that is being used in an active negotiation. Here you can see the different floors of the building, not too much in the basement. Let's look at all the floors. And naturally, you can get into the model from a very detailed perspective, but I'm looking at it from a holistic view. Fire investigators love this because you're spending so much less time on scene. To do this house took 35 minutes, and normally it would take hours. And when you're dealing with not the most safe of environments, exposed wires and glass and so on, the objective is less people, more safe, get the information that you need for analysis. One question we get is this sufficient for forensics? It is, and there's precedent in courtrooms and other use within the judicial process. So I couldn't help but want to give Brian a little bit of urging. So St. Paul's not out there, but Newport City is. So they actually have scanned their police and fire station. So that's only about 10, 15 minutes away from you, I think. And so this is one that's one of their public models. Naturally, their crime scenes are something that I would not share. But the uses of these models are very diverse, very compelling across local government. And the speed and ease and low cost in which they are able to be scanned now is truly a game changer. So let's go back to the presentation. A lot to cover in a very short period of time. So what's different now? What's the game changer? It's cost first and foremost. Budgets are real. You can't just introduce new things and expect a big budget to automatically create itself. So the good news is that everything we're talking about here is substantially different cost-wise to the neighborhood of 70, 80, 90% less expensive than conventional solutions that have been used. Part of that cost savings is the democratization, the speed, that you don't need specialists, you don't need additional staff to necessarily perform these functions. They're smartphone simple, minimal skills needed, and that really extends the GIS team to the field, where an officer can, even a probie, can be as effective in capturing this information as sending out the crime scene specialist that usually was only dispatched for a minority of cases. Now most of the cases can be scenes can be aggressively captured and used for analysis, perhaps not at that point, but in the future, it opens the aperture of a much more rich data set of policing activities. The other thing is these solutions have a very full-featured baseline solution where you get the imagery, you get LiDAR dimensional capture, accurate to centimeter or even millimeter degree. Annotation and labels is included. Security is included on password protection and blurring and so on. And you can export where you're not held hostage, where you have this information necessarily within one provider's system. We're very sensitive to that. So, and the ecosystem is increasing where now you can take outputs and integrate them with Esri, ArcGIS, Autodesk, and tools that you're currently using. So again, it's an and rather than an or. The value of Arcadis, we take these various commercial solutions and make them relevant for government. Government is different. So the way you procure them, the way they need to be secured and complied with certain mandates, reporting and auditing and governance. A lot of folks here love the CJIS acronym. We know it well, and we take these solutions and achieve them in a CJIS compliant way. For schools, a HECVAC compliant way. We're the layer that makes them suitable for government use. And government is using them. So at a federal level, we've got a lot of reference customers. At a state and local level, even more so. Probably in the neighborhood of hundreds of departments are already actively using these. And happy to bring some of those customers to a conversation one-on-one, or they could speak directly to how easy it is and how this has changed their workflow. I believe that there is an opportunity for the GIS leaders on this call or the department heads to reintroduce this data and value set into policing and operations and that value stream. So how? So first, part of the problem in analyzing data is it needs to exist, right? And what this does is it really hits the nitrous button on data origination, where you can scan a scene and convert a building or a scene into data instantaneously, not just actual data of the scene, but metadata. What time did it happen? What was the location lat and long? And then you also get the point cloud, and you get the visual 4K imagery, where a lot of those links of where scenes happened, it's very easy now to actually click on the scene if it's captured and go right to it. Also, the power's in the aggregate, right? So if we can scan more scenes, we have a more analytically rich basis to use for the trending and analysis that we're currently doing. So it helps in proactive. It helps on scene, where now we have 911 organizations sharing these models to the patrol car on scene, and then post scene analysis for either judicial processes used in courtroom, helping the DA understand, and so on. It's got a full life cycle relevance where it's very impactful. The other aspect is that it's relevant for non-technology audiences. It's very accessible. It's very intuitive. People relate to imagery, and they're used to that kind of interface with Google Street View. This is Google Street View on steroids, with the same kind of interactive interface folks already know, but with relevance as far as the scenes and control of that data and that information and put to good use. 3 important other points I want to emphasize. 1, it's very easily integratable and can energize your other GIS efforts and data sets. Okay, it's another perspective, and it's I don't want to say seamless, but darn close as far as extending your existing systems with this information once it's captured. 2, it expands GIS participation to the field, where if this could be incorporated, an auto accident, for example, while you're documenting, a scan can be done literally in 5 minutes. More significant auto accidents, they love the speed of police love the speed of this, because you're not shutting down the highway for hours. It's more minutes, so that helps the community as well. But it expands the participation, where GIS is no longer restricted to the basement office. It's actually originated in the field, where you have more current, more routine data sets available, and folks buy into this, and that's very important, I think, for GIS to reach its full potential. Lastly, it helps really position your department for the data-centric future. You've got AI and ML and other next-generation solutions happening. All of these solutions need scenes or need data sets to be applied. So the more that we can scan them, the more they can be included in that data set, and they can be available. And when I say they scan them, we actually have some communities where there are issues where the residents are scanning the buildings or the facilities themselves, not for crime scenes, obviously, but for if there's an issue where they see a crack in the wall or something visual that can be shared with the Public Works Department. You don't have to do all this information gathering yourself. You can actually put it out to the community. Citizen engagement can do it with their iPhones and submit those models, very similar to those that we shared on the presentation today. As I said, this is happening, and the solutions and data products should be led by, or at least guided by, those that understand geospatial or lead strategy for the department. Let me give you 2 examples to leave with as far as future capabilities, right? So here's an example of, I'm just picking one at random, ingress, egress planning, right? So for disaster exercises, planning, and so on, here's a space. It's a home, and it's coming up, good. And here you see a path that's already, should be posting any second. There we go. So you have a walking path or an execution path for police or fire or so on, and they've got a floor map, and they say, all right, here's the deal, guys. We got to hit every bedroom, and then we have to go out the back door, right? So you can click on which rooms, and you have now a very facility situational aware area where we know what rooms we can go to. We know what furniture can move versus not. And then what I want to do is move the exit path. And what it will do is AI calculate the most efficient path, realistic with all the furniture and so on that's in there. And then you just hit the play button and it literally flies you through the model of, okay, guys, this is what we're going to do. Familiarize yourself with the scene if you're not already familiar with the school or the house or so on. And then they go and they actually do that action. Could be for training, could be for actual ingress egress plan, you name it. The models, once they're available, have so much utility that we're just really scratching the surface on what's possible. Other aspects are you can automatically identify objects within models to make sure there's code compliance. How many sprinklers are there? How many fire extinguishers are there? And so on. So the trajectory of value that public safety is leveraging from these models is truly compelling and needs to be part of the process to start before you can actually leverage the data for any value. These are some other areas, sensor integration and so on. I'll leave this for follow-up questions if there's anyone interested in those. And with that, I would invite all the panelists to rejoin the call with your videos on, where we can be available for questions. And I thank everybody for their time.
Great. Thanks, Seth. Gentlemen, well done. That was very compelling. A lot of good information there from each of you, Brian, Jonathan, John, and Seth. Well done, for sure. We do have some time left, fortunately, and a few questions I'd like to pose to the entire panel. Some are specific to individual presentations, but we'll start at the top. Megan asked a question to you, Brian. Can you talk about the process of collecting and recording the raw data? I assume she means the raw RMS data from dashboards, and how did you maintain the accuracy of that information? I think the question is, how did you get your RMS data into GIS? If I read that correctly.
Sure. It was Megan, is that right?
Yes, Megan. Mm-hmm.
So good question. Thank you, Megan. We have internally a basically self-constructed Oracle database that spans multiple decades, and we're blessed to have our DBA still working with us who designed it back in the day. So we ingest from our CAD system, which is run by the county. A good portion of it has spatial coordinates to it, but depending on how the source comes in or some of the error rates on officers when they generate information, we may not have the accurate levels we would desire. So then we run, with the help of Geographic Technologies Group, actually, to clean and apply through multiple geocoding levels to get to the most accurate locational information. So the data coming in terms of the tabular data, we take it as is, but then we might apply some more refined geographic information where it may be lacking or doesn't seem to meet our standard. I'm trying to think, John, James, do you think there's anything else I need to answer to that other than we're going from Oracle to a separate database we extract out. So it's a one-way for CGIS compliance. It's a one-way door. Then from this repository, we can then build our data as well as our dashboards. So you have to have your geographic component to go along with your tabular or your data component that's non-spatial, but it's only one direction. And we get that overnight. We chose to do a nightly refresh.
Yeah. And the timing of when that data gets updated, I think was part of that question as well. Yeah. Great. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Yep. Another one. This is from Bryce to Jonathan. Did you experience any challenges in setting up the community analyst tool, or was it pretty intuitive? So that's the Esri tool that Jonathan was showing in building those reports and various other dashboards and so forth. So how easy was it to use, I guess?
Yeah, I think you said that was Bryce. Yeah, very, very easy, I will say. As far as doing the completely out of the box things, the things that I showed in the demo today, where you're using standard geographies, pulling those in, running the preset or predefined infographics, a couple clicks. I mean, you could be up and running in about 5-10 minutes. there's a nice tutorial to get you introduced to the various capabilities within ArcGIS Community Analyst as well, which isn't available or wasn't previously available in some of the other Esri solutions. So I think that's a nice addition that they've added specifically for community analysts. The one thing I will say, the more I think it does introduce some, I won't call them challenges, but some learning curves when you start to open up all the capabilities that are possible within community analyst. You can get into weighted variable modeling and site suitability and doing things that really start to empower the capabilities of having demographic and social tapestry information like that at your fingertips. So I think when you get there, there's a bit of a learning curve on how to best utilize it, but only because there are so many pretty awesome possibilities within that.
Indeed. Kevin asks, what RMS systems are these demos sourcing data from, and what sort of interface is used? I think, Brian, you touched on it a little bit. St. Paul is using an Oracle homegrown RMS system. In my experience with other entities, and I'll let you speak to that here in a second, Brian, but really any database is information that can be collected and used in GIS. We're talking public safety, but it can be a lot of different things. But the industry standard RMSs, in my experience, are easily accessible. Brian, yours is a little bit unique as far as homegrown Oracle. Some are SQL environments, some are DB2 environments. But yeah, if you'd like to talk about, I think the answer is any RMS, really, in my experience.
I was going to say, how can I put it? The end users, look at how they're engaging the RMS system, the officers, and how they're bringing in and the CAD data and how they're managing cases. To me, it doesn't really matter which brand you're using, or if you're using a very scaled down system where you're simply piling your data into what your database structure is. The key for us to get the dashboards and to get the spatial data is, now that we've identified, what we're looking to get out, our arrests, our citations, our calls for service, our sources. Once we've identified the common components across multiple dashboards, then we extract that out. And I will say, having worked in non-policing as well, if you're in the permitting office, you probably have data you're collecting either on paper or electronically or over the web, and you're pulling that together into a data source. So then you can then begin to think about, how can I visualize that? How can I connect it to the spatial? Even with the work that Seth is doing, how can we start to look at some of our critical infrastructure locations and say, yes, we'd like to have some of that 3D visualization available as a component of situational awareness. So we're agnostic, I guess, is the answer for what the RMS system needs to be. But know your data and know what your intent is to get your use out of that data.
Yeah, agreed. Well, this is an interesting one. Dhruba is in Kathmandu, Nepal, staying up late with us tonight. So I think you're probably pushing midnight in Nepal. So hope all is well on that part of the world. And the question is, if the demographic data from some of the locations are missing, how does the system work? How the infographics results identify such locations? Jonathan, I think that's yours.
That sounds like it's for me.
Yep.
So admittedly, I have not used Community Analyst with respect to Nepal, but I have pulled up some things since I saw that question in here, and I have done some work in Canada where you kind of switch countries within Community Analyst, and so you have different data sets based on what data is available there, and different infographics based on what data is available. Esri has a resource, which I have pulled up here. I don't know that I can share my screen again, so I won't do it at this point in time. But for instance, if you recall during my presentation where I was looking at the number of geography levels that I was able to pull from the US, where we were looking at the country, the state, the county, going down to the municipalities and the census blocks and the tract groups. There are 11 different geography levels for the United States. For Nepal, there are only 3. That are available, and that's country, provinces, and districts. In addition, the number of variables that you have available to you from the United States is, Esri doesn't even put a number on it. There are so many in different I forget the vintages of those data sets. But the number of attributes available for Nepal is 39. So in turn, that's going to leave you with less infographics available. Like I said, I do have it pulled up here. It looks like there's about 6 infographics, those predefined infographics to choose from, with Nepal set as the country, and 3 kind of breakdowns to use within the geographies as well. So I hope that answers the question. I don't have firsthand experience with it, but ultimately limited data is going to lead to limited infographics available as well.
Yeah, and I would envision that number going only up, right? So worldwide, as Esri grows and builds their environment for us. Seth, you got a question from Michael. How is the 3D data collected, and what type of device, what kind of capabilities are used, and can you leverage drone technology? Are they involved as well?
So great question. First, I would stress that there is a diverse set of information that has already been captured that a lot of folks don't know about. Companies are doing this themselves. GIS is rather fragmented today. I'll give a quick story. I was helping scan a MOUT site, which is a military urban outdoor training environment. Actually, I think I reversed the O and the U, but it's where military, it's like a hollowed out Hollywood city, right? Where they do actual training in buildings, and there's replicas of churches and office buildings and so on, and all series of first responders and military use those for actual training. And I was there scanning with a member of the government who shall remain nameless, and he says, "Yep, this is my 12th time scanning this MOUT site," and it was in Virginia. I said 12 times. Why are you doing it 12 times? Why not just do it once? He says, well, the Army wants their version, the Air Force wants their version. So if you can imagine that kind of distributed out there, one of the things Arcadis is focusing on is where's the content existing and how do we get it organized and activated so that it can be used in a way that these presentations were leveraging. So that's first. Second, your question about new data capture is a very good one, because the great news is that there's a series of new innovative technologies that allow for the front end capture, as I mentioned, to be done far more economically cost reduced, and time-wise, a fraction of what used to be required. So everything being on an XYZ basis, I want to give props and kudos to a company. The models we showed today were all from one of our premier platform partners called Matterport. And Matterport has a camera. It's a LiDAR camera. Actually, they have several, where their technology allows their camera, allows Leica's camera, the BLK360, and even allows smartphones to be used to capture. So the diversity of how you capture is getting increasingly broad. To your question of drones, that also is based on outputs that can be standardized on an XYZ format. So the challenge then is, how do you take these distributed capture devices and homogenize them into a way that can be system and operationally relevant for policing and other communities? That's what our company does, is looks at the distributed ways of capturing, looks at the organizational goals, and how do we standardize those in a format where you don't have these distributed spindles of different technology and different file types, but instead are converted automatically and then leveraged in a uniform way. So Skydio, Drone Deploy, they're companies that we work with. You could take that drone output and you can actually integrate it with terrestrial output. And time not being today, but give me a call, I'll show you an integrated version where now you can fly through buildings, back up high, and all of these capture outputs can be unified into a single view, which obviously has much higher utility than if you were to go to individual file formats to do all that. So great question. The whole industry is maturing. What you need is that ligament, that glue that brings these disparate providers into a standardized format. And that's where Arcadis has put its attention and focus.
Great. Thank you, Seth. And thanks for the question. So this one is for John Melee, John at CompassCom. Can you give some details on what is needed on radios and devices in order to be tracked? And do you have custom software?
Okay, thank you. Basically, and today, as all these gentlemen have been saying, how things are evolving and changing and becoming, more available to everyone. Basically, today, I would say every radio device that you would encounter in the marketplace today is already shipping from the factory with GPS capability in it already. So that generally, once you have acquired your radios, if you look carefully at them and how they're configured and how you develop the programming for the code plug in the radio, you'll probably find GPS is already there. You've already bought it. And then at that point, it becomes okay. So now that I know that my radio can do that and it can send its location back to a central site where we can ingest that information. It's basically what you're investing in now. Is you're investing in the aggregator, the place where all that data sits, and then the back half of the plan is, now that I have all this data, what do I want to do with it? Most systems are going to provide a view of that data, and then of course, as you listen to all these gentlemen talk about all the ways to utilize it, display it, measure it, use it for planning purposes. I would say, especially particularly in the law enforcement space, if you want to take advantage of the type of technology you see in front of you today here, you would want to ensure that whatever you were selecting was designed to share that information and not to capture it and keep it, housed in a unique application and that's what that platform supports. You really want to be able to share your data, because once you start seeing it and you have it, you're going to start thinking of many ways that you could use it, and you're going to look around your environment, and people are going to tell you, "Hey, I wish I had that data." We're over in this department, we've invested in a solution that if we had that data, that product would be much more useful to us. And you want to be able to do that, absolutely. But it's very commonplace now. This is not this is more at the bottom edge, I would say, than the leading edge. It's available, it's there, and you probably already own it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, the technology has grown. Back in the day when I started, it was AVL, right? Automatic vehicle locations. Well, that's not the case anymore. It's not where the unit is, where the vehicle is, it's where the device is. So you look at, first responder safety on when they leave that unit to go on a foot pursuit or whatever, you can still track their location with the radio or any other device. So yeah, it's really ADL now, automatic device locations at this point. So well done. Yeah, good job. Well, good. I think we chewed up all of our time for today. So on behalf of all of the panelists, Brian, Jonathan, John, and Seth, I want to thank you for your insight and your expertise in your field. And thank you very much for attending today. For those that are visiting us online through the webinar, I'm sure each of these gentlemen would be happy to chat with you more. If you think of something or have other questions, feel free to reach out to the collective group or individuals here on today's panel. And I'm sure each of us will be honored to meet with you and discuss even further. A lot of information covered in a short period of time, always difficult to do and stay on time, but I think you all hit the mark with each one of those. So thank you very much for that and your time, as well as the Connect Me group. Thank you for facilitating today's meeting. Be on the lookout for the recording that will be made available as soon as it's processed, in probably a day or so. You should have that link and other future coming up webinars. If you follow this series, you're going to get a wealth of geospatial information from multiple disciplines and multiple panelists. So on behalf of everybody, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day or evening, wherever you might be located in the world. And thanks again. So look forward to seeing everybody soon. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.